Why do people who seem successful still feel something missing inside? Why do the same fears, worries, and struggles appear again and again in human life, no matter the country, age, or time? What if the biggest mistake in life is not something we did wrong, but something we never understood about who we truly are? Across history, Hindu philosophy has explored these questions deeply. Texts like the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita suggest that the root of human suffering is not simply bad luck or an unfair world, but ignorance of our true nature, a concept called avidya, spiritual ignorance. This does not mean lack of school education. It means not knowing the deeper self, often called the Atman, which is described as the inner consciousness beyond the body and changing mind. See Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. According to many Hindu traditions, when we mistake ourselves only for the body, our roles, or our success and failure, we become trapped in endless desire, fear, and dissatisfaction. This is connected to the idea of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, which is understood not as a punishment from a god, but as a natural result of actions and attachments. Different schools explain details differently, but this core idea is widely discussed in Hindu thought. In this video, we will explore these teachings in a simple, practical way, using real-life situations so they feel close to your own experience. Stay with the full journey to see how this ancient wisdom offers not fear, but hope and direction. If this kind of honest, thoughtful content helps you, consider liking the video and subscribing so you don't miss future discussions. Many people move through life on a fixed path without ever stopping to ask why they are running so fast. From childhood, we are taught to measure ourselves by marks in school, praise from teachers, approval from family, and later by salary, job title, and social status. This way of living feels normal, but it creates quiet pressure. Modern psychology also notes that tying self-worth only to success and comparison can increase stress and anxiety, especially among students and working adults. This matches a teaching found in the Bhagavad Gita, which explains that strong attachment to results can disturb the mind and lead to inner unrest. See Gita 2.48. The text does not reject action or effort, but warns about losing balance when identity depends only on outcomes. Think of a student who believes, if I fail this exam, I am a failure. The exam becomes more than a test of knowledge. It becomes a test of identity. Later, the same pattern continues. If I don't get this job, I am nothing. Or, if others are ahead of me, my life has no value. This comparison mindset is now stronger in the age of social media, where people often see only the best parts of others' lives. Studies in recent years have linked heavy comparison on social platforms with lower life satisfaction, especially among young people. While Hindu scriptures did not speak about social media, they clearly discuss how constant desire and comparison disturb mental peace. Gita 2.62-63. In this busy cycle of chasing and comparing, people rarely pause to ask a deeper question. Apart from my roles, my marks, my job, who am I? Life becomes mechanical. Study, work, earn, worry, repeat. The Upanishads encourage inquiry into the self, but this inquiry needs time, reflection, and a calm mind, which modern life often does not allow. The problem is not action itself, but living without awareness, where identity is built only on changing outer things. According to Hindu philosophy, this unexamined way of living is the starting point of deeper confusion about the true self, which later teachings try to address. A common source of confusion in human life comes from mixing up who I am with what I have or what I experience. From a young age, people learn to describe themselves using the body, roles, and feelings. Someone may say, I am young, I am a mother, I am a manager, or I am sad. These statements feel natural, yet each of these identities changes with time. The body that was small in childhood grows, ages, and slowly loses strength. Science clearly shows that the cells in our body change over the years, and our physical appearance is never the same for long. Hindu teachings also point to this change. The Bhagavad Gita explains that just as the body passes from childhood to youth to old age, the inner sense of I continues through these changes. Gita 2.13. This verse is often used to show that the body and the deeper self are not exactly the same. The same confusion happens with roles. A person may strongly identify as a student, but one day studies end. A worker may lose a job. A parent's role changes as children grow up. When identity is built only on roles, every change feels like a loss of self. Modern life examples show this clearly. Retirement can bring a sense of emptiness, not only because of money concerns, but because the role that gave meaning is gone. Hindu philosophy suggests that roles are part of life, but they are not the whole truth of a person. Emotions also add to this confusion. Feelings like joy, anger, fear, and excitement rise and fall throughout the day. Psychology describes emotions as temporary mental states, influenced by thoughts, situations, and even sleep and health. Yet people often say, I am an angry person, or I am a failure, turning passing emotions into fixed identity. The Gita and the Upanishads encourage observing thoughts and feelings rather than fully identifying with them. This does not deny emotions. It simply points out that they change, while the sense of being aware of them remains. This teaching forms the basis for the idea that the true self is deeper than body, role, or emotion, a view widely discussed in many Hindu philosophical schools, though explained in different ways. In many Hindu philosophical teachings, the deepest problem in human life is described with the word avidya, which is often translated as ignorance, but not in the usual sense of not knowing facts or lacking school education. It means not knowing our true nature and mistaking the temporary parts of life for the real self. This misidentification is considered the root error. When a person believes, I am only this body, this role, these thoughts, a limited identity is formed. From this limited view, a sense of me and mine grows strongly, and this is what many traditions call ego, not as an insult, but as a basic sense of separate identity. The Bhagavad Gita discusses this idea when it says that actions in nature are carried out by qualities of nature, yet the person under the influence of ego thinks, I am the doer. Gita 3:27. This does not deny human effort. Rather, it questions the belief that the individual self is fully independent and separate from the larger order of life. When this ego-centered view becomes strong, it naturally leads to comparison, pride, shame, and fear. A person may feel superior when things go well and deeply inferior when things go badly. Modern psychology also observes that strong ego involvement in outcomes can lead to anxiety, stress, and unstable self-esteem. Desire grows from this condition because the person feels incomplete and looks for completion through achievements, possessions, or approval. At the same time, fear grows because anything that supports this identity can be lost. The Gita explains that dwelling on objects leads to attachment. Attachment leads to desire, and from desire come anger and confusion when things do not go as expected. These teachings do not say that having goals or feelings is wrong. The point is about mistaken identity, when the changing body and mind are taken as the whole self. Life becomes a constant struggle to protect and prove that identity. Vedanta philosophy describes this as the root of bondage, while different Hindu schools explain details in their own ways. The common message is that ignorance of the true self creates ego-centered living, and this brings mental suffering even when outer conditions seem fine. Hindu philosophy explains that once ignorance about the true self continues, actions performed with strong desire and ego do not simply disappear after they are done. This idea is described through the law of karma, which many Hindu traditions understand as a natural law of cause and effect, not a system of reward and punishment given by a person like God. A key point often discussed is that intention matters. Two people may do the same outer action, but their inner motives can be very different. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that actions done with attachment to results bind the person more strongly, while actions done with a balanced mind have a different effect. See Gita 247-50. This does not mean we stop acting. It highlights how the mental attitude behind action shapes inner life. Another idea connected with karma is the formation of mental impressions, often called samskaras in yoga and Vedanta traditions. These are like subtle marks left on the mind by repeated thoughts and actions. Modern science uses different terms, but it also shows that habits form through repetition, creating strong patterns in the brain and behavior. If a person repeatedly reacts with anger, jealousy, or fear, those reactions become easier and more automatic over time. Hindu philosophy describes something similar. Actions driven by desire and ego strengthen certain tendencies, and these tendencies push a person towards similar actions again. In this way, the cycle continues. These impressions do not stay only at the surface level. They influence how a person sees the world, what choices feel natural, and what situations they are drawn to. Many teachers explain that this is how past actions shape present life patterns. While details about how karma works across lifetimes are understood differently by various Hindu schools, the basic idea that actions leave lasting effects on the mind is widely discussed. Because of this, ignorance of the true self, ego-driven action, and the building of impressions all connect together, showing how inner patterns develop and continue, making it harder to step out of old ways of thinking and living. When ignorance of the true self continues, life often feels like a repeated pattern that never ends. Hindu philosophy calls this cycle samsara, which is the continuous cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. This cycle is not punishment from a god, but a natural consequence of actions, desires, and attachments that are carried forward through mental impressions and tendencies. Every choice, every desire, and every attachment contributes to the patterns that shape future experiences, creating a continuity that links one life to another. The Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita describe this cycle as a process where the soul moves from one body to another, like changing clothes, while the deeper self remains unchanged. Gita 2:22. The cycle continues because desires remain unfulfilled, and the mind keeps seeking satisfaction from temporary things. Every time a person attaches identity to their body, roles, or emotions, they create new tendencies that carry forward. Even small habits of anger, fear, or attachment add to the mental impressions, gradually forming strong patterns that influence future behavior. This is why people often feel trapped in repeating mistakes, even when they genuinely want to change. Modern psychology also notes that behavioral patterns and conditioned responses repeat until awareness and conscious effort intervene, which aligns closely with the Hindu understanding of samsara. Samsara also explains why life includes suffering. Aging, loss, illness, and death are unavoidable, and they serve as teachers to encourage reflection and growth. Hindu philosophy teaches that these challenges are not meant to punish, but to help people notice the impermanent nature of life and to turn inward towards self-understanding. Unresolved desires, strong attachments, and unexamined identities ensure that the cycle continues, while self-awareness and understanding of the true self can reduce the momentum of this cycle. By observing life and reflecting on experiences, people begin to see patterns rather than being carried blindly by them, making it possible to act differently in the present. Although the concept of samsara may sound abstract, it is easy to see in everyday life. A person may go through repeated cycles of ambition, success, stress, and disappointment. Relationships may face repeated conflicts, jobs may change, and challenges may appear again and again. In each case, the underlying patterns of desire, attachment, and ego-driven action mirror the larger cycle described in Hindu philosophy. Understanding this cycle is the first step towards seeing the bigger picture of life and realizing that freedom comes not from avoiding life's experiences, but from learning how to navigate them with awareness, insight, and inner balance. Many people do not realize they are trapped in patterns of ignorance until certain signs appear clearly in daily life. One of the most common signs is endless dissatisfaction. A person may achieve a long-sought goal, such as a promotion, a degree, or financial success, yet still feel incomplete or unhappy. This dissatisfaction comes from attaching identity to outcomes rather than understanding the deeper self. The Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads describe this as the effect of ego-driven attachment and desire, which cannot bring lasting peace because the body, mind, and external world are constantly changing. Modern research also supports this, showing that people who focus too much on external success without inner awareness often report lower life satisfaction and higher stress. Another clear sign is a fear of loss. People often feel anxious about losing status, wealth, relationships, or health. When identity is tied only to what is temporary, any possibility of loss feels threatening, and the mind becomes restless. Closely connected is the habit of comparing oneself to others. Social media and society's focus on achievements make it easy to feel inferior or superior based on external measures, which strengthens the sense of ego and increases suffering. Psychological studies have confirmed that constant social comparison reduces happiness and increases anxiety, echoing the Hindu teaching that ego and desire are the main sources of mental unrest. A fourth sign is dependence on external validation. People may constantly seek approval from family, friends, or peers, believing that praise confirms their worth. When validation is absent, self-doubt rises. Closely related is the repetition of old mistakes. Despite learning from experience, patterns driven by desire, fear, or ego tend to repeat, showing the influence of past impressions, samskaras, that carry forward. Finally, inner unrest, despite external comfort, is another sign. A person may appear successful and content on the outside, but internally they feel stress, anxiety, or emptiness. Hindu philosophy explains that these patterns are natural consequences of attachment, desire, and ego, and they signal the need for reflection and self-inquiry. Recognizing these signs in daily life is crucial because awareness is the first step toward change. By noticing dissatisfaction, fear, comparison, dependency, repeated mistakes, and inner unrest, a person can begin to question the roots of these experiences. This understanding does not eliminate challenges instantly, but it allows the mind to start moving towards self-knowledge, helping reduce the patterns that have caused suffering for a lifetime. This practical awareness shows that the teachings of Hindu philosophy are not abstract ideas, but tools for understanding real-life struggles and creating inner balance. The hopeful message of Hindu philosophy is that even though life can seem like a cycle of suffering, there is a way to move toward freedom and peace. One of the first points is that ignorance can end. The lack of self-knowledge, which creates ego, fear, and desire, is not permanent. By seeking understanding and reflecting on who we truly are, a person can gradually reduce confusion and mental unrest. This awareness shows that life is not a trap, but a journey of learning. The second point is that awareness changes destiny. While we cannot control everything in life, knowing the nature of our mind, actions, and attachments allows us to respond differently, making patterns of suffering weaker over time. Third, the freedom we seek is inner, not external. Many people look for happiness in wealth, relationships, or achievements, but these can only provide temporary comfort. Real peace comes from understanding the deeper self, which is unchanging and beyond the body, mind, and changing circumstances. Fourth, self-inquiry is a powerful tool. Hindu texts like the Upanishads encourage asking simple but profound questions such as, "Who am I?" or "What is real in me?" This practice helps distinguish the temporary from the eternal, gradually revealing the self. Fifth, detached action, or karma yoga, teaches that we can act fully in the world without being attached to results. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that performing duties with balance and without selfish attachment reduces suffering and builds inner strength. Gita 2:47-50. Sixth, devotion and surrender, bhakti, help soften ego and reduce fear. By connecting with a higher consciousness or expressing love through devotion, people can feel support and inner comfort beyond worldly achievements. Finally, seventh, meditation and reflection create clarity. Daily practice of quieting the mind allows one to notice thoughts, emotions, and patterns without being controlled by them. Psychology today also supports meditation for reducing stress and improving awareness, showing that these teachings have practical value in modern life. Together, these 7 points form a clear path. They show that while life may naturally include challenges and cycles, a person is not powerless. By developing self-awareness, practicing reflection, acting without attachment, cultivating devotion, and meditating, anyone can gradually reduce suffering and experience inner peace. This is the essence of liberation, or moksha, in Hindu philosophy, freedom that begins from within, turning life into a meaningful journey rather than a repeated struggle. It emphasizes that the punishment of ignorance ends the moment understanding begins. In life, many people feel trapped in endless cycles of worry, stress, and dissatisfaction without fully understanding why. Hindu philosophy explains that the root of this problem is not always external circumstances, but ignorance of our true self, called avidya. This ignorance causes people to identify too strongly with their body, mind, roles, emotions, and achievements, which are all temporary and ever-changing. When identity is based only on these things, desires, fear, and attachment grow, creating patterns that repeat throughout life. The Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads teach that the deeper self, or Atman, is constant, beyond the body and mind, and cannot be harmed by these changes. Gita 2.20, Chandogya Upanishad. Understanding this helps us see that suffering is not meaningless, but a signal to look deeper. Hindu teachings also explain that actions driven by ego and attachment leave lasting impressions in the mind, called samskaras, which shape future behavior and experiences. These patterns can make life feel like a repeated cycle, or samsara, where challenges, mistakes, and struggles appear again and again. Recognizing these signs in everyday life, dissatisfaction, fear of loss, constant comparison, dependence on others' approval, repeated mistakes, and inner unrest, helps a person understand the need for change. Modern psychology also shows that awareness, reflection, and conscious practice can reduce stress, break habits, and improve emotional balance, showing a clear connection between these ancient teachings and modern life. The path toward freedom begins with self-awareness, reflection, and practices such as detached action, meditation, and devotion. These help reduce ego, calm the mind, and reveal the true self. Life then becomes a meaningful journey rather than a trap of repeated suffering. The most hopeful message is that ignorance is not permanent. An inner understanding can end the cycle of pain. By observing life, questioning identity, and acting with awareness, anyone can experience peace, balance, and a sense of freedom, turning everyday challenges into lessons and opportunities for growth. This makes life not just about surviving, but about awakening to who we truly are.